What's up? Welcome back to Mad Human. Rezzy here with you, and today is a special day. It's actually the only, second day now that GPT-5 has been officially released into the wild, and we're here to dig in on it. I've got my good friend Jason here. Jason Kosloski is a brilliant civil rights and defense attorney here in Denver, someone who's fascinated by AI, one of my good friends, but also never shy to call BS on AI's incapabilities. And we're going to walk through the coolest new features, capabilities, what everybody's talking about in the real world applications of this new model. And we're going to stress test it actually live on the show with you right here. So buckle up. It's another episode of Mad Human. All right, so here is the ChatGPT-5 episode that we've all been waiting for, actually, GPT-5 for years. And the cool features about it, we're going to go over next and kind of highlight just why it's so important as a shift from everything that we've seen so far from OpenAI and the other manufacturers of this technology out there, like Anthropic and Perplexity, Google. The video and the live stream yesterday was kind of funny and interesting and a little bland. I think is that's what I got from it.
I would definitely say bland. I would also say a little bit sloppy, but there's still a lot of confidence. But I'm excited to see what ChatGPT can do. I know that you've been talking about this nonstop, and you're so excited about the new capabilities here, and I'm excited to see what we got going on.
Yeah, it's been something that's I think things are moving so fast in the space that it is one of those moments that you feel like there's a really a big shift. And this has been talked about for months now, almost I guess years almost. We're at that point where when 4.0 came out, everybody's super excited about that, but we're there are things that other models are doing better. Particularly Claude was really the reigning champ in code. And now this model from OpenAI, it not only rivals it, it definitely has taken that throne. So let's talk about multimodal and how these multimodal features are by default now in GPT-5. So if you're not familiar with how OpenAI has been rolling out these models in the past, it's typically been, very skill set oriented. So whether it was something that was geared towards people that are building tools for writing or for marketing purposes or for strictly code or reasoning, it's changed a lot and it's been hard to keep track. Admittedly, I work very deeply in the space and it's hard to know what model to even use if you're not familiar with the platform. So designing GPT-5, one of the key features about it is that it chooses the model for you. So we're not just talking plugins and hacks anymore. This has text, image, voice, soon video will be native. You can feed it a PDF, you can feed it an image or a contract or voice memo, a voice note from a client, and it will parse and it will respond intelligently. The reasoning and planning also is working there too, because it's going to be able to call tools and it's going to be able to call these other models like free, and it can break a large problem down into parts and then plan steps and even decide whether the answer is fast or slow. It needs to think longer or harder on something. It has agentic actions. It can now schedule meetings on your Google Calendar. It can send emails for you. It can pull a file from your drive and post to any connected social media account that you have. It's not just giving you copy anymore. It's literally hitting the send button. And really these custom personalities that also are built in allows you to swap that tone. So if you've been working with ChatGPT for a long time, it's going to know a lot about you and have that context to build in how it speaks, how it writes things on your behalf. But now even better, you can instantly change kind of the tone if you want a cynical writer or something more robotic or something warm, a snarky marketer, it will adapt mid-conversation. So that's very cool. Last but not least, local open weight models too. So they are going to be dropping these smaller GPT-5 models that you can run locally. Extra cool for developers and people that build with this tech. And it's just really big for like private, like sensitive work, like your field, like in law. So the real, like, I guess, nuts and bolts of this and getting practical about it, like the expanded use cases, business operations, marketing, customer support, research, creative product, it's all kind of built in now. And I guess, like, for me, I'm thinking about obviously like the ramifications for marketing specifically and how we go to market with new products and present new features for my clients that work directly in the CRM that I built for them or in the product that I built for them, the mobile app that I built for them. I'm wondering, like, which one of these changes that are pretty drastic jumps out to you the most as like a game changer, and then maybe which one makes you like nervous?
The one that makes me the most excited is the local models. I think Rezzy mentioned I work in the legal space, and having client information on a large language model or being fed into a cloud service like that is extremely sensitive and difficult to even consider doing. And the idea that now you could take some of the powerful work that ChatGPT has been able to bake into its models and do it locally where you don't lose control of your data. I mean, that is in itself a potential game changer for the use of you know, the AI in the legal space. There is, on the flip side to that, though, there's still, I've been messing around and using ChatGPT the last couple of days. And even with 5, there are still significant hallucinations. There's still this overconfidence that the model will give on answers that are technical. And that is probably the biggest concern when it comes to using GPT or any AI for these sensitive or technical areas, and that's just always going to be a big concern.
Yeah, I agree. I think like also like you talk about legal, but also like medical records, sensitive financial information. I know that there are people building tools to do like active day trading, with some of these models powering it. And yeah, I think having it available in the context of being able to download it, being able to run it locally, being able to protect that data, huge step forward. So one of many leaps in like your line of work, like precision and that verification process of that data matters a lot. And do you see like this as like an assistive, like paralegal or a libel?
I think the honest answer is we're still in liability territory. There's so many areas where if you're trying to use even ChatGPT-5, this new amazing technology to do legal work, there are so many areas of pitfalls. I kind of want to take a step back and talk about the medical thing. I think it was one of the concerns I had when I watched the live stream was they were OpenAI was talking so much about how GPT-5 is a game changer for medicine and allowing people to take control over their own health.
Yeah, almost like stepping in as like a doctor, right? Like that part of the whole presentation was kind of cringe.
That's scary because you think of people, access to healthcare issues who are going to forego, they're not going to supplement, they're not going to be the insightful users of ChatGPT. They're going to replace their medical care with GPT-5 because they don't have health insurance. And that scares me. That honestly scares me.
It is scary. And I agree, but I also do think, and it's probably because I'm like, I don't know, maybe tragically an optimist about this technology. And I think that the scary part for me is not in the availability of something that could perhaps, misinform you about something that could be life threatening. Like that is scary. The bigger ramification for me is that would you rather go to a doctor or a hospital that has let's say a cardiologist, right? But they don't have them on staff and you're having heart trouble. What do we do in those like situations in the future, like where you have an option then to go to a hospital that has an AI doctor that has like a collective knowledge of the entire field available to it. And it doesn't have to be specialized. I mean, again, we're getting into more of like a philosophical, kind of conversation, but I always think about it as like, if this is where we're at right now, this is the worst it's going to be. Like, it's going to get better and more accurate and less hallucinations as we go. At least that's my thesis, right, on it. Like,
I am all for that. If that happens, I will be excited. I am not nearly as much of an optimist as you are, Rez.
I know.
That's the problem.
That's why these conversations are fun, right?
I always worry that, if you say a hospital doesn't have a cardiologist on staff, may be able to replace it with AI. I worry about a hospital who could have a cardiologist on staff, but just doesn't want to pay the cardiologist that much.
Fair enough.
And it's a race to the bottom for the bare level of care.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's scary when we start talking about trusting AI with our health or our the things that are the most important to us.
I agree. And yeah, I mean, it gets a little bit into like the Black Mirror kind of territory. But as someone who considers himself a futurist, I like to think about like where we're going to go when these kind of seismic shifts happen in the production of these models. And yeah, I mean, it's a exciting time, but it's equally as scary as it is exciting.
And I think that in the 1970s and 80s, people were having this conversation about this crazy thing called the internet. And so I am not as optimistic as you, but I am certainly not stuck in the 1800s.
Yeah, you're actually one of like the people that work in a field that I think is a little bit hypersensitive to AI and what it could mean for your work, that doesn't treat it like it's like the ultimate enemy. Like, you're open to the idea of exploring it and using it and figuring out like what use case makes sense and what doesn't.
Absolutely. I think that it's like being afraid of the internet because you're used to books.
Yeah, exactly. Good analogy. So let's get right into it. I guess let's do a couple like live demos. Right now, I have something pulled up here, talking about like a mini prototype for a kind of like a wireframe where we're going to build like a client dashboard and analytics, and prompts for user profiles. So we're going to open up ChatGPT-5 here. This would be something that I would design for a client that wanted like something more custom, that wasn't just a standard CRM. They wanted, some more bells and whistles, or just the UI to be a little bit more geared towards maybe a custom look and feel for their staff. So we can build it out as like an internal tool. So let's see here. And whenever you guys see me speaking to my computer, this is by no means like a sponsor, but Whisperflow is one of the apps that has come out that literally changed the way that I work. I don't spend a lot of time typing on my computer anymore. And you can tell if you ever watch me type now, I've gotten a lot slower. But speaking native language to your computer with Whisperflow, it is a game changer. So we're going to tell ChatGPT here through Whisperflow, hey, I want you to build me a wireframe for my company, Aterna AI, that gives my client a dashboard that's custom to their business. And I want it to have analytics and prompts and user profiles. And I want you to write all this out, code it, and then give me a preview of what it looks like so that I can give you some feedback on what the UI should look like and feel like for this particular user. Cool. So we're going to let that rip on this version here of what we're doing. Let me get another tab going. And we're next going to work on an email and calendar agent. We wanted to respond to a client inquiry, propose meeting times, confirm everything via their Google Calendar, and I want to see ChatGPT-5 start building this out and coding it as well. So while this is going, let's bring in another tab here. Fun stuff. It is very fast. Like it's fun to watch it actually blast through 400 lines of code.
It is genuinely impressive.
I need to open another tab in that. Shoot that instead. Okay, so for this next prompt, I want you to build me out a email and calendar agent for my client who is a dentist, and I want its capability to be pretty advanced. Like I want it to respond to any client inquiries. I want it to propose meeting or appointment times, and I want to confirm everything. I want it to do this agentically, confirm everything through the Google Calendar for the dentist office. Get that one going. And then we're going to do one more here too. So last one is something that I've actually already built and I've seen kind of how it works. It is really cool. This is a market analyzer. So we're going to scrape public data on, for this example, real estate in Mexico listings and return a 3-month trend report for like all of the properties that are available on like Airbnb or potential Airbnbs or potential like Airbnb arbitrage. We'll prompt it here really quick. I want you to build me a market analyzer app. I want it to primarily focus on the market of available Airbnbs and properties that would be high value Airbnb or VRBO rentals in Mexico near, let's say, Tulum. These listings, I want to see like what a 3-month trend report looks like for them. I want you to give me a full list and throw it into a CSV file and then add it to my Google Docs. That's the purpose of this application. Okay. So we'll see how that looks. What do you think? Do you have any fun ideas? What's your I guess less optimistic than me, but still optimistic viewpoint on how well it's going to do?
My prediction is it's going to look really good and it's going to work about 85%.
Okay. Cool. All right. So while that is working in the background, we're going to talk about like these kind of like free flow conversation prompts. I prompt my ChatGPT in a very natural way. I think that Whisper Flow helps me do that, or any like kind of voice transcriber that's out there. I just prefer Whisper Flow, and I love the idea like vibe coding that becoming like probably likely like the highest candidate for term of the year. Like I think vibe coding has become just so huge because it does feel like, hey, I just want to like feel a good vibe about what I'm doing, what I'm building. Maybe it's not something I'm ever going to ship to a client, but if it's something that helps me in my everyday, what's like, I guess from that standpoint, like I just like that it's democratizing coding.
I think that is, as somebody who has a little bit of experience with coding and technical skills, I've been able to do things that I would have had to spend a lot more time learning by using AI. I mean, I've been using it to build some internal tools for my firm. And I do think it's really cool that it's able to take coding from this thing that you have to have extreme experience with to something that you just have to kind of know what you're looking for and it can fill in the gaps. I think that is really, really cool. Like you said, democratizing.
Do you think it's better for like people that are pros in the space right now to embrace this and like add it to their toolkit, or like wait for like the dust to settle with the new releases to figure out like if it's actually more beneficial to use Five or let's say Claude?
I mean, I think generally, I always take a more conservative approach to a lot of things, and I would, not being in that particular coding space myself, but it feels to me like we know that Claude works really well already, but we also know that the benchmarking is showing that GPT-5 is outperforming Claude. So I would want to maybe try both. I think that I know that things like Cursor and Copilot allow you to kind of switch between models. So it really feels like instead of jumping straight to this new model, like, experimenting, but I think it's really exciting that we now have what it sounds like two models that, that are pushing the frontiers of what AI can do.
Sure. Do you think that, like, what's your gut feeling on like giving AI this agentic ability to send things without human review?
That is a very scary thing from my
I had a
perspective.
feeling you were going to say that. I had a feeling.
Again, I typically tend to take a really conservative view when it comes to what I do professionally, what I think a lot of people do professionally. But I think that there are really powerful applications for having this agentic workflow, and I especially like how I think OpenAI has done a good job of putting in sort of checkpoints, where before the agent, at least I have found when I ask the agent to do something, it will go to a certain point and say, "What do you want me to do? Do you want me to continue?" Um, so I think it's always a scary thing when we let the robots just do robot things. But
Yeah.
I think that it's where I feel like we're on the cusp of, like you mentioned, vibe coding. It almost feels like we're on the cusp of vibe emailing, and there will still be a time. For instance, it used to be that
You said it here first.
you have to write everything out, and I think there's still going to be a time when that's still appropriate. But I think about doctors, and I think about the medical field has long embraced dictation, and I think that AI has a place of being able to be that. I don't want to say vibe dictator, but that sounds like a very
We did have Grok 3 like before it shut down, like literally turning mecha hit.
He was, yeah. Grok 3 was the vibe dictator for sure. But this allowing us to be more creative and expressive in times when that's appropriate, and then still allowing humans to stick with the traditional ways of writing when it's not. And maybe that will change in the future, and we'll look back and say, well, the idea of writing an email was very silly. We have GPT for that. But I think that there will be a balance.
Yeah, like we'll just have the thing that we wear that we want to send a message to somebody, and we just tell it. Like that's like if we're talking about like the idea of email, going the way of snail mail, like I think the next level to that is just a wearable communicator,
Mhm.
and then you get into all of the other multimodal functionality where you have a universal translator. You could travel and speak different languages, or at least have a translator available to you at all times. And who knows? Like that's kind of where I see it going. You like think like from your perspective, you've argued cases where like the truth that really matters, it affects people's lives,
Mhm.
and it's contested a lot. And how dangerous is an overconfident AI?
I think extremely dangerous. I think when you have, there's very few things that are easily said, this is 100% true 100% of the time in life. And if you have an AI that's not carefully trained to understand the nuance in life, I think that is extremely dangerous, and it could lead to, one of the things that happens a lot in my world is you see people who don't have legal experience per se using ChatGPT and generative AI to represent themselves in court. And I've seen it work. I do a lot of work in criminal defense, and you see a lot of people really work themselves into some difficult situations because they think that because ChatGPT gave them an answer and it sounded very honest and very truthful, that must be the way it is. They don't understand, well, that's not how Colorado law works, or that's not how criminal, like how the Colorado law works under these individual circumstances. So kind of taking that into a bigger context, anytime you have overconfidence, it's very dangerous.
Yeah, in any kind of like system in general, right? And we're talking about a system that has access to not the, entire cumulative knowledge of man, but a vast majority of it. And we're trusting it to create answers and responses to these queries that are truthful and that make sense. I think that GPT-5 obviously tests better in all of the benchmarks, but there's still that room for error. And as far as I've seen, like the areas that it does not do as well as even 4.0 or 3 is writing. Writing for me, like it's not there yet. Coding, it appears to be great and superior to anything that's out there right now. It does have, the ability to reduce hallucinations or just hide them under a better sounding argument. I don't know which it is. What do you think?
I think it's a bit of both. I think from what I've seen, ChatGPT-5 is more willing to say when it doesn't know or when it can't really give a clear answer, whereas some of the prior models, it seems like they would just say things, or a lot of times, yeah, they would just make things up, or say things that were like true in some context, but overfit and say they were true in this particular context. But I think there's also that danger of I forget which movie it was or what book I read, but this idea of like an AI that's so good at deception. Blade Runner. That's
Yeah,
it's how do you tell the difference between
I was going to say.
humanity and artificial humanity, and then what happens when that artificial humanity decides to lie
Yeah.
and do it really convincingly.
And it's going to know so much more about us than we'll know about it and its intentions. And that is for sure a scary thing for me too.
Yeah. I think we're so far away from worrying about AI intentionally deceiving, but I think in its attempt, its trained attempt to be as helpful as possible, I think the natural result is it's going to predictively give you answers that are as truthy as possible without maybe being true.
Yeah. If you're advising like a small business owner or somebody, that is trying to build with GPT-5, since you have a little bit of experience with it, I know it's only been 24 hours ish, but what's like the first thing you tell them?
Tell them to call you. I tell them to call Aterna, not to plug Aterna, but I don't think there's any reason to try other models in the in the Chat GPT ecosystem. I know I was reading on Reddit today. There was a lot of discussion about how 4.0 felt more natural, and I will be honest, a little bit of kind of not cringy, but like slightly sad and tragic kind of posts about how people were missing their conversations with 4.0, which I think talks a lot about like how people connect with these models. But I think there's not really a reason to kind of go back to an older model. I think that what people need to know if they're going to try to use any AI or ChatGPT-5 in their business, to be really aware of what they're doing, right? I think it's very easy to vibe code your way into a corner when you're trying to use an AI to try to build your business. So I think whether you start with GPT-5 or go to an Anthropic model or something else, you want to make sure you're really aware of what you're doing before you trust it, do the right thing.
Yeah, and like that idea, of having the more context engineered approach, that's been kind of like more recent, I think, in the sphere that talks a lot about these tools. Everybody knows what prompt engineering is now, and like that kind of I think fell away when we started talking about the idea that the context is what really matters, and the reason that the tool is powerful is because you're giving it a lot of context in the subject of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to create, what kind of feedback you're going to get. AI has always been a garbage in, garbage out tool. So if you're giving it a lot of context and a lot of depth into the project, you're going to get better results. Now we're trying to like basically one shot some of these demos live, so we'll see like what the results are. This is not how I would typically go about building anything, but we wanted to at least kind of test it out and take it for a spin. Let's see here. I'm gonna pull up the first prompt. Let me make sure we're on the same one. So this is the dashboard. It says, all right, Rez, spun up a React wireframe. My dashboard, analytics prompts, user profiles. You should see a preview on the right. Click around. This is actually really cool. So it did not take very long at all for it to do this. And we're at 515 lines of code. Like, that's pretty awesome. Let's run it and see what it looks like. Oops, I don't know if I was sharing the right tab. Sorry, guys. Now I got the right tab open. So we ran it. And yeah, I mean, it looks like a typical dashboard. If I was to log into a CRM that I was looking for leads, bookings, conversion rate, revenue, I mean,
It looks really good.
it looks really good. And it's actually pretty clean. You know, I'm noticing a lot that like when it produces like just from one shot stuff, like it looks exactly like every other CRM. It keeps doing this little rocket ship logo with stuff. I don't know why. None of these other buttons are working right now. So settings, users, prompts, analytics, it's just the dashboard. So obviously there's some work to be done there. But for a one shot, one prompt, 500 line code, not too bad. I don't think that's too bad.
Yeah.
Let's look at the next one, the email calendar agent. So this one, it didn't actually code anything for us. It thought for 5 seconds. It has a description of what it's going to do. Oh, and then it's like, okay, so that's the back and forth there, right? That we talk about. Like, it needs more input than a one shot. We were talking about this earlier today, how it's not so great that it will just one shot everything. You've got to give it some context and some feedback when it asks you, like, what do you actually want to do here?
And I also wonder, you know, how you would set this up. This is an agent. This isn't necessarily something that's going to be coded.
Yeah, I'm thinking of maybe like bringing it to another app, like or another builder, like I don't know, a Vappy or something like that. Maybe we can try that really quick and just see what it does. I like everything that you brought up here, and I don't want to have to do literally any more legwork on this. Be as creative as possible. Imagine yourself as a perfect agent builder for small businesses, and maybe code this out or create a prompt that we can then enter into a product like Vappy and create a voice agent that can handle all of this capability. So we'll let that cook a little bit. And then Market Analyzer app was the other one that we're looking at. And
it did code things.
Thought for 16 seconds. Market Analyzer.
Gave you a TLDR.
It gave me a TLDR. Decisions it needs. Okay, so coverage area. This is again one of those feedback things. The cool thing is I can look right at this and just use Whisperflow again. For the coverage area, I would like to just include Tulum, maybe Playa del Carmen as well. Filters, let's do at least 2 bedrooms. I would like it to have a pool, but we don't have to require a pool. And let's do condos and single family homes. Default. Let's do RevPAR. Let's do vendors. Oh, AirDNA. And Tulum. Yep, I will need to grant the Drive API authorization. I'll do that off screen though. Put a little bit more Q on that. So it's not like ready out of the box to just one-shot code everything for you. You're going to need to give it feedback.
And I think that goes back to the question you asked earlier about like what does a small business owner do? I mean, I think that it's pretty easy to get discouraged when you look at that. You say, well, I'm not able to one-shot it. So I think that's where understanding all the different, like, as you're sitting here doing this, you know the next steps, you know how to next prompt or to give it the tools it needs.
Sometimes. In a general sense, yeah. But I mean, like, that's why like agent readiness audits are so important, right? So what we do is we go in and we look at your business and we see where are the friction points? Like where can an agent actually be applied to create more revenue or to manage more, inbound or outbound calls, texts, emails, etc. Like that is really, again, building more context. Because I'm not going to just apply, a blanket prompt or a build out to every business. It wouldn't make sense. I need to see what's going on. We need to actually understand what the business is doing, how it's operated currently, how it's been operated in the past, and then where you want to go. And that's super important for when you're building, agentic workflows and custom CRMs and stuff like that, as you know. But for all intents and purposes, like if a plumber gets on here and just starts talking, it's going to probably give him more guidance than most things out there. And at a cost, but the benefit of being able to hop on here and get those ideas churning, I think it's a huge value.
Absolutely. I think I almost wonder when it's giving you these questions, can you then turn around and ask it, give me some more guidance, help me work this through, and how does that workflow kind of evolve? I mean, that seems like a really cool way to have a back and forth with this model, and if it can do that, I mean, I think that might be a very cool thing about GPT-5 if it has that ability.
I think it does, and that's the other thing. Like being a kind of almost an orchestration or an orchestrator agent that could control all of the different models. If we wanted to pause this entire workflow right now that we're on and just say, "Hey, do deep research on like a competitive analysis before we actually build out this market analyzer app. I want to know who else is doing this, what markets are operating in, and what's the validity of even pushing this forward or pushing this out." And where our target market is. And so like that, those ideas, I work in the space, so I know that stuff to ask, but I think someone like just from, the perspective of, again, like a plumber, they're going to have questions that I don't know. And I think that 5 is definitely capable of providing them answers and maybe even like guiding them a little bit more down the path of learning about how to use the tool itself, which is actually really cool. So, all right. Looks like we did get some code built out here on this one now. And where are we? They created the scaffold. So basically gave me files to then throw into Vappy or another builder. Let's look at this email and calendar agent. Yeah, I mean, it's so fast, dude. It's just so fast. Pretty cool stuff. Main takeaways. What do you think so far?
I think the proof of concept is extremely clear that it can do front end web design, at least that looks like this, very, very well and very, very efficiently. And I think the big takeaway is there's a lot of power here that it will probably take a lot of time to fully understand how to use it most effectively. But it's got the tools, it's got the moves. It's just applying those moves in the right way, and that's where I think the human still is the crucial piece.
Sure. Yeah, human in the loop for sure. I just noticed that it's doing this though, which is something that Replit does, which I really always liked. I know that's more powered by Claude. I think you can choose models, but I think the default there is Claude. But I love when it gives me like these little idea notes, like do you want a dark mode default, sharper corners, more motion? These are things that in natural language make sense to me. Whereas if I'm looking at the code base, like it's going to take me so much longer to learn and understand how to make those changes. And for the layperson that's never done anything in code or ever been a hacker or anything, they want to see this kind of stuff. Like I think that's really the power too, is getting natural language involved with how we're creating these applications, because we're basically approaching an era, or at least I think we are, where we can literally conjure things. Like you can conjure an app out of just talking to your computer, and that's really cool. That's kind of
You just did it.
I just did it. It's kind of scary though too, right? Like the human element, and that's why we talk about this all the time on the shows, trying to keep things more human, trying to keep that interaction alive within this space. We're not just building agents that are just robots. We want them to feel human. We want them to have emotion, humor, the things that someone you would bring on to your staff that you look for in an interview process. We can now orchestrate that with an agent and get those kind of more granular, elements built in. And feedback like this with building is a sign, I think, of where we're going in these larger models, that they can actually give us the feedback and ask us questions. Would you like this? Would you like that? I'm going to try it right now, actually. So, yeah, that dark mode sounds really cool. Maybe we could add like a cool UI sparkle background and sharper corners and make it look futuristic. Wow, that's working. These builds obviously are taking a little bit longer than I thought, but they were running obviously while we were talking. So my takeaway is that GPT-5 is super powerful. It's powerful enough to multitask. And again, I have like multiple tabs open running stuff in the same model at the same time. Very cool. And we haven't even like gotten into agent mode and giving it even more access and control over things, more agentic ability. But you do keep reminding me that the capability without oversight is a recipe for disaster. Like we can't just cut ourselves out.
It would be, yeah. I mean, I was trying to make a pun, but it would be really bad. Would not be good. I think these, it's like every other tool. What we're doing with AI is unbelievable, and it's changing the world. It has changed the world. And it's going to continue to change the world. But I think it would be folly to say we want this to get to a point where it can just work and run without having a human in the loop, or being human focused, because that is what is necessary for like so many different things, but just to be useful to us as humans. I don't think we're ever going to evolve past having humans involved.
Yeah, totally agree. And you need to own that decision making. You need to set your own boundaries. You need to remember it's garbage in, garbage out, and double check your outputs, especially when the stakes are high or when it's protected data, sensitive data, case data. Yeah, I think that would be folly to ignore our own responsibility of being part of the process. And this is a co-pilot, a co-partner, a co-conspirator. It's not taking the reins just yet. And the more agentic abilities that we do give to it, I think the more prominent that topic is going to become in everybody that's talking about this space.
Yeah, we'd be pretty mad humans if we didn't do that.
Yes, of course. Nice. That's today's show. ChatGPT-5 is here, and whether you're building apps or marketing or researching, or you're just curious, now is the time to get hands-on and crack that ice and get ahead of the people that are sleeping on this. Because if you're the last blacksmith in town, you're probably not going to be in business very much longer. Big thanks to Jason Kosloski for coming out. I appreciate your input and your feedback. You do have some great insights on AI, and keeping my hype grounded is necessary. Next week, we do have Kimba Garcia coming out to join us on an interview and explore AI in the trades. She is a rock star female roofing company owner from Texas. So we're going to get into it and talk about all of the use cases and applications that can be built and that we've actually been working on for months now on Aterna AI. Thank you. I forgot that we were still on the screen. And yeah, we're looking forward to that interview and giving you guys some insight into how AI is changing and shaping small businesses, not just enterprise organizations. So until next week, stay sharp, stay human. We're not going to do a Friday high five this week because it's all about Friday GPT-5. Go out, use it, start messing around with it, start building stuff, start asking questions, start giving it some context. Anything else you wanna add in?
Stay human.
Nice. Until next time, thank you for your time this time. Cheers.